High agency people don't hate structure, they don't hate accountability, and they don't hate standards, but they absolutely hate being micromanaged. Because micromanagement isn't about clarity or outcomes, it's about control replacing trust. At the core, high agency people experience the world as something they can work with, shape, and move through. And when someone starts hovering, checking every move, dictating how instead of being clear about what, it feels like someone has grabbed the steering wheel while they're already driving. What looks like support to a low agency system feels like friction to a high agency person. Micromanagement slows the one thing high agency people protect above almost everything else, which is throughput, meaning the speed at which decisions get made, actions get taken, feedback gets processed, and outcomes get delivered. High agency people think in outcomes, not steps. So when someone tells them exactly how to do something instead of clearly defining the result that matters, it feels like being forced to solve the wrong problem. They don't want freedom to be reckless, they want freedom to be effective. When you micromanage a high agency person, you're not making them safer, you're making them smaller because you're communicating, whether you mean to or not. I don't trust your judgment, and nothing kills engagement faster than having responsibility without authority. That's the part people miss. High agency people are perfectly willing to own outcomes, absorb risks, fix mistakes, and clean up messes. But the trade off they expect is autonomy over execution and partnership in decision making. Because ownership without autonomy isn't leadership, it's liability. And ownership without partnership is just being told what to do with extra steps. High agency people don't want to be managed like task doers. They want to be treated like thinking partners, especially with peers and leaders, where the relationship is built around shared goals, honest disagreement, and mutual respect, rather than instructions and compliance. Micromanagement also breaks the feedback loop that high agency people rely on. When someone is constantly correcting, approving, or second guessing every move, the signal gets muddy because now they're not learning from reality. They're learning how to please a person. And that shift is deadly for anyone who thinks clearly under pressure. High agency people want clean cause and effect. They want to act, see what happens, adjust, and move again. And micromanagement inserts noise into that loop, slows learning, and replaces problem solving with compliance. And here's the part that really matters. High agency people don't experience control as neutral. They experience it as a downgrade. It tells them they're no longer being evaluated on results, but on obedience. And once that happens, their best traits start shutting down because curiosity gets replaced by caution, initiative gets replaced by waiting, and judgment gets replaced by checking in. You'll often hear managers say, they're great, but they're hard to manage. And what that usually means is the person thinks independently, moves quickly, expects partnership, and doesn't need to be told how to do their work. High agency people hate micromanagement because it treats competence like a risk instead of an asset. They don't need someone standing behind them to make sure they're doing it right. They need someone who can set direction, clarify priorities, remove blockers, and then engage with them as a partner when trade offs or decisions show up. That's why high agency people thrive in environments where leadership is clear about outcomes and constraints and loose about process, and where peers are expected to challenge each other rather than defer automatically. Tell them what matters, why it matters, and what success looks like, and then treat them like a partner in figuring out how to get there. And they'll usually outperform expectations because that's literally how they're wired. And when you control them tightly, something predictable happens. They either disengage, slow down, and do the minimum required to avoid friction, or they leave because high agency people would rather take on more risk in a freer environment than stay safe in a constrained one. This is why micromanaging cultures tend to keep low agency people and quietly repel high agency ones, even though they often claim they want owners and leaders. You can't ask for ownership and then supervise every keystroke. High agency people also hate being controlled because control assumes fragility, and their entire identity is built around adaptability. They expect plans to change, conditions to shift, and problems to show up, and they trust themselves to adjust in real time. So, rigid oversight feels like preparing for a world that doesn't actually exist. And when you zoom out, this is why high agency people tend to rise into leadership, entrepreneurship, and senior roles, because those positions reward judgment, synthesis, and outcome ownership, not compliance with someone else's playbook, and they require constant partnership across functions and levels. They want to see the whole board, not just their squares. They want to understand why a decision matters, not just how to execute it. And they want to be trusted, to think, to challenge, and to collaborate. Now, if you're a manager leading a high agency person, this is the uncomfortable part you need to hear. If you feel the urge to micromanage them, that's not a signal that they're the problem. It's a signal to assess your own approach, your own comfort with your ambiguity, and your own capacity to lead through outcomes instead of control. Managing high agency people requires you to be clear, decisive, and secure enough to let go of how the work gets done while still holding the line on what must be delivered. It requires you to set direction, define success, and then trust someone else's judgment, which means you need judgment yourself. If you can't articulate outcomes, if you need constant visibility to feel safe, or if disagreement feels threatening, you're going to struggle with high agency talent, not because they're difficult, but because the role is asking you to level up. And here's the reality most managers underestimate. High agency people are usually your most valuable players, even if they're not the quietest or easiest to manage. And if you don't adjust your style, you won't fix them, you'll lose them. They won't always quit dramatically. Sometimes they'll disengage first, sometimes they'll stop offering ideas. They'll just do what they're told and save their real energy for something else. And sometimes they'll leave the moment a better environment shows up. And when they leave, what goes with them is speed, initiative, problem solving, and ownership, which are the hardest things to replace. So here's what actually works if you want to support high agency people and keep them on your team. First, be radically clear about outcomes and constraints because ambiguity at the goal level forces control at the execution level. And the clearer you are about what success looks like, the less you'll feel the need to interfere with how they get there. Second, shorten feedback loops instead of adding checkpoints because high agency people don't need more approvals. They need faster signals from reality, which means regular, honest check ins focused on results, not constant oversight of activity. Third, involve them early in decisions that affect their work, not after everything is already decided, because partnership upfront prevents resistance later and turns execution into ownership instead of compliance. Fourth, normalize disagreement without punishment because high agency people think independently, and if challenging you feels risky, they'll either stop thinking out loud or stop caring, both of which hurt the team. Fifth, protect autonomy visibly because nothing builds trust faster than a leader who says, "This is yours. I trust your judgment, and I've got your back if it doesn't work," and then actually means it when things get messy. Sixth, evaluate performance on outcomes, not style, because high agency people don't all look the same, and forcing them into a narrow mold is how you lose their edge. And finally, do an honest audit of your own leadership habits because managing high agency people exposes where you rely on control instead of clarity, and that discomfort is the work. Managing high agency people isn't about becoming hands off, it's about becoming higher leverage. You either grow into a leader who can set direction, trust talent, and partner with strong thinkers, or you create an environment that quietly pushes them out. Now, if you're a high agency person and you're being micromanaged, there's a responsibility on your side too. The first move isn't to silently tolerate it or quietly resent it. It's to have the hard conversation, clearly and calmly, about outcomes, autonomy, and what you need in order to do your best work. That means saying out loud, "I'm accountable for results, but I need room to decide how to get there," and seeing whether the system is capable of adjusting. Sometimes managers don't realize the damage they're doing until it's named, and sometimes a single honest conversation resets the relationship and creates real partnership. But if you have that conversation and nothing changes and control keeps replacing trust, then you need to take that signal seriously. Because staying in a micromanaged environment long term will erode your instincts, dull your judgment, and train you to wait. And that's the opposite of how high agency people stay sharp. High agency people don't thrive in cages, even comfortable ones. If the environment can't change, the move isn't to fight forever. It's to leave and apply your agency somewhere it actually compounds, whether that's a new team, a new company, or your own venture. High agency people would rather build in uncertainty than stagnate in control. High agency people don't hate management. They hate management that substitutes control for clarity and partnership. They don't want to be unmanaged. They want to be trusted and treated as peers in solving meaningful problems. And when they don't just perform better, they think better, move faster, and take responsibility more seriously because autonomy plus partnership turns competence into leverage. That's the real reason micromanagement feels intolerable to high agency people. It's not about ego, it's about efficiency, ownership, respect, and choosing environments where your ability to act actually matters. If you like this content, please subscribe. See you in the next one.